Welcome to Hustle and Pro Season 2, talking sports in Frisco from youth to pro. Now here's your host, Kelly Walker.
Welcome to today's episode of Hustle and Pro. The way we experience sports just at a 180. Remember the days of making memories at games that we still talk about with our friends and our family? Well, we definitely do, and sports broadcaster Chris Mycoskie is here via Zoom to give us a little ranking list. How are you today, Chris?
Doing well. Appreciate you having me, Kelly.
I appreciate you jumping on with us. So I know that you have some fun things to share via this list. But first, I want to jump in with a couple quick hits to get to know your sports favorites. You ready?
Okay.
All right. What's your favorite sport to watch?
Baseball. I am, I grew up essentially in the Rangers clubhouse, and we'll talk on the list a little bit about my grandfather, but he was the original Rangers team doctor.
That's awesome.
Getting to go to games with him as a kid, baseball just runs through my blood, and absolutely my number one.
I love that. So what about your favorite sport to play?
Well, these days, as a 41-year-old, church league softball is pretty much all I play, other than, unless you count running as something I'm doing
well, that
for
counts.
recreation.
Who is your favorite all-time athlete?
Nolan Ryan. Just cannot beat his larger-than-life persona off the field and on. And I love that just a couple of days ago was the anniversary of the game with the White Sox and the Robin Ventura charging the mound. So we got to go through all that again. But that was one of my earliest thrills, actually, in journalism, was getting to interview him. I did it as an 8th grader.
Oh, wow.
So I was writing for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. They used to have, they may still have it, I don't get the paper anymore, kids and teens section called Class Acts. And I wrote a weekly column for them. And through that, they set up an interview with Nolan Ryan for me. So to get to go one-on-one with him, on cloud 9.
That's incredible. Oh, that's great. He's one of the all-time greats. So I probably could guess your next answer, but who's your favorite all-time team?
Oh yeah, no, the Rangers, like I said, it's in the family. It's never leaving us. And obviously you get frustrated as a fan with a lot of things, and they're not immune to my criticism. Sure. But no, I love the Rangers.
Me too. What about your favorite sports movie?
Bull Durham is fantastic. I wish I could have put together a top 10 list on sports movies too, probably.
Well, I'm going to do that soon, so you can help me. I want you to fill us in a little bit. I know that you've called games on ESPN platforms, Flow Sports, TXA 21, with the American Digital Network. I know you were calling Conference USA games in mid-shutdown in March. So give me just a kind of a quick rundown, and then let's crack open this vault and hear about your list. So tell me also about this list of yours.
Sure. Well, for 8 years, I was with the Southland Conference in Frisco. And then last year, I went out on my own and dived back into freelance sports broadcasting. And my most recent event was in Frisco, the Conference USA Women's Basketball Tournament on March 11th, which in our family at least, and I'm sure for a lot of people, will go down as the last normal day.
Yeah.
We actually had a full day of college basketball. I had 2 women's first round games that day, and was set to call men's quarterfinal games on March 12th. Okay. And then, of course, everything got canceled that day. No more college basketball. NBA was actually postponed on that evening, I think March 11th, and that was the sign that, all right, this is going to start getting weird.
That was the Rudy Gobert night, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we are not, you're not in a booth calling games right now, and we're, like I said, kind of consuming sports completely differently. I'm consuming more sports on Twitter right now than normal, which is fun but different. But so tell me about this list, and let's get started.
Well, the list that, you and I were going back and forth on what can we talk about when I come on, and that list came to mind, something I put together a decade ago of the best things I've witnessed in person as far as sporting events go. And I realized I hadn't tweaked it at all in the decade since. And obviously I've experienced a lot of cool stuff in that time. So trying to figure out where things rank now, adding in the great events of the past decade, it was tough. And, I could probably change this up over and over again and never really be happy.
Right.
But you'll notice, since you saw the old list, that the top three things all stayed the same. But past that, there are quite a few new additions.
As it should be. And I think those are baseball heavy, so I'm excited to get to those. So let's start with the 10, 9, 8 section or any honorable mentions you want to talk about that didn't get on your section.
Well, sure. Yeah, let's start with some honorable mentions, the ones that I really had a hard time keeping out, but I just could not quite fit all of these in there. And a couple of them happened in Frisco. Up until this past season, I had been to every FCS championship game, and the best among those, January of 2015, North Dakota State, Illinois State, the Redbirds scored with 90 seconds left to take the lead. It looked like they were finally going to end the Bison's domination.
Run. Yeah.
And then Carson Wentz does what Carson Wentz does, drove them right back down the field, scored with 30 seconds left, and North Dakota State won its 4th straight national championship.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible. And, obviously the legend of NDSU just continues to grow. They've won 8 of the 10 championships that we've had here in Frisco. And
talk about legend. I can't even believe how much they're known here. I mean, I have no affiliation with NDSU, and yet they're like a force that I think they actually have an app that's like the herd coming down here every year, and you feel it here in town. You see them everywhere. I mean, it is awesome though. I love it.
No, it's incredible. And the one year in that streak where they didn't make it, we still had a sellout at the stadium. James Madison versus, I want to say, Illinois State. Is that right?
I don't remember, but yeah.
We'll figure it out. But we still had a sellout. But what we didn't have was that 10,000 extra fans who just come down to tailgate, even if they can't get into the game itself. And that's what NDSU does for this city, which is just amazing. And
it is.
If we have a championship in 2021, obviously hope that the Bison get right back here. They are the economic stimulus plan for Frisco.
Yeah. For sure.
And then the Frisco College Baseball Classic, I've been part of that every year since it started up.
I love that tournament here.
It's always so much fun. And in 2018, the Saturday night primetime game was Baylor versus Texas A&M.
I was going to say A&M somebody. I couldn't remember who it was. Yeah.
And that was my first time doing play-by-play for a game in a sold-out stadium. So that always brings up great memories, just the energy in that place, looking down from the booth and seeing every seat filled. And, just the way, Aggies dominated the crowd that night. It was probably about 80-20, which was surprising because, Baylor, I thought they would bring a few more people.
Well, and even if it was more even than that, the Aggies make themselves known a little bit more, right?
Right. Yeah. And it just, the Aggies won that night, but the score really wasn't even consequential. It was just the atmosphere in that stadium and getting to call that game for ESPN3 with David Saltzman, who's a great friend of mine. And we had a good time. Now, non-Frisco honorable mention, I'll make these quick because I know we don't want to go too crazy long. When I was with ESPN 103.3, I was on the motorsports beat. I did the weekly Texas Motorsports show, and I covered the True Value 500, which was the first ever Indy Car race at TMS. And there was a brawl that broke out in Victory Lane, and I was right there in it. Billy Boat thought he won the race. Ari Leyendyke thought he did, comes in and starts something up with AJ Foyt, who owned Boat's car. And then the
Wow.
next morning, this was the big controversial thing, the IRL came out and admitted they made a scoring mistake, and Ari Leindyke actually had one. So they were doing victory lane celebrations with the wrong guy, and Ari actually was justified coming in saying, I won. What are you guys doing?
What a mess.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I could see why that is memorable. That's pretty cool.
I covered the first Saban Bowl, LSU versus Alabama in 2007 when I was a sports anchor in Baton Rouge, and Bryant-Denny Stadium, Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge, Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. If you're a college football nut like I am, just two meccas, and being in there for that game, goosebumps.
Yeah, I bet.
And LSU came back and won at the last second in that one too. A couple of baseball ones that didn't quite make the list, couldn't get them on there, but incredible. 2011 ALCS Game 2, Nelson Cruz with a walk-off grand slam. Only walk-off grand slam in Major League postseason history.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, the fact I was there with my brother, with my wife, with my sister-in-law, and just amazing atmosphere, the chants coming down from the stairwells as you exited the place, and just on top of the world. Just a high that I didn't come down from for a couple days.
Yeah, I love that. I love Nelly. That's great.
And then a couple of weeks later, obviously, you get the ultimate sadness in baseball.
Yeah, yeah. The
and
highs and the
that
lows.
obviously didn't make the list.
No.
The final game at the ballpark in Arlington last October.
Yeah.
I mean, it was inconsequential. The Rangers were so far out of it, but it felt like a playoff atmosphere. The way you were living and dying on every pitch and wanted to go out a winner from that place.
Yeah, just the finality of it all being in that ballpark, to know that was it.
And I had so many great memories in that place for so many years, and to close it out like that. And I didn't go back yet for any XFL game. I haven't been back for a soccer game yet, so it'll be weird going back in to see it in its new configuration.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been looking at pictures or anything. The North Texas Soccer Club has played, I think their second game is just coming up when we're recording this today, but it looks cool. I mean, it's different, right? I mean, it still feels like the ballpark and looks like the ballpark, and you see the signage and everything, but the way that they had to dig into the stands a little and reconfigure for the soccer field, it actually looks kind of cool, I think.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It's different, and I'm glad they were able to find a way to keep using the stadium. And one high school moment that didn't make it, the best high school game I've seen with my own eyes, Allen versus Duncanville in 2018. Duncanville ended Allen's 30-game winning streak. And there's so much talent on that field. You had big-time college coaches just lining both sidelines, hoping they can land any of these guys. One final honorable mention that I just had to go into a little bit more detail on because it was right there. I almost did a tie for 10th. The BCS championship, January 2008, Ohio State versus LSU. I was working for the Fox affiliate in Baton Rouge, and Fox was carrying the game that night. So I actually came down with a terrible, terrible cold. I had 102.5 fever. I remember measuring that morning. But you can't call in sick the day of the national championship game.
Right.
So I am, we were a fairly low budget station, so I'm shooting. You won't see Mike Ducey doing this for Fox 4, but I am running up and down the field, shooting all the action with my camera, putting together a story, doing that. And then, so I'm sprinting up and down the field all night long to get in the right space. And then at the end, after the game, after the Fox national coverage goes off the air, I have to host the local Fox postgame show. And I'm doing all that with 102 fever, suit and tie on, just running straight adrenaline, and got to cover, the team that I had followed all year long, LSU, and those personalities, see them win a national championship. That was cool. But
that is awesome.
Here's what made it just above on number 10, and it also involved Ohio State. It's the 2015 national championship game in Arlington. Ohio State versus Oregon. First time they had played a championship in that new 4-team playoff format. And, it's in my hometown where I grew up, Arlington. And my grandfather had been in Arlington for 70 years since graduating from, take a guess.
In Arlington?
He's living in Arlington, but think about so you had a 50-50 shot. The two teams playing in that national championship game, it's Oregon versus Ohio State.
Oh, well, gosh, my guess is Ohio State. Is that right?
He went to school at Ohio State.
Okay.
And after graduating from med school, set up his practice in Arlington and had been there for 70 years. And they end up playing the first national title game in this new format in the town he had been in for that long.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, I just planned on going with my dad and my brothers. We were going to go to the game regardless of who was playing in it. And then after Ohio State clinches a spot, I hear from my cousin Blake, and he has a little bit of money, to say the least. He'd actually just sold half of his company for $1 billion, I think. He founded Tom's Shoes.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So he had a little bit of money to play with.
So let me get flying everybody in and booking it, everything, and doing it right.
All of the aunts and uncles and cousins, all to go to the national championship game surrounding Grandpa.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. 50-yard line, second deck, great seats. And, Grandpa at that age, he couldn't see at all. He could barely see an inch in front of him. And so he still really loved sports, and he would watch in quotation marks, games at home, but really he'd just be listening to the call. And he was perfectly happy doing that for every football game, for every baseball game. But because of the magnitude of it all, Blake wanted to do something special for him. And we rotated around. We all sat in a circle around him, essentially. And we rotated sitting next to him to tell him what was happening in the game.
You did your own play-by-play for him.
Exactly. I got to do play-by-play just for a one-man audience for at least a quarter. And
that's so cool. Just the vibe being in AT&T Stadium, and it was probably pretty new at the time too. But even now, it's still awesome to be in there. But what a cool vibe, and his school and all your family there.
It was so great.
Awesome.
And, everybody coming back. I think my wife was really the only person in our generation who didn't come, and just because she was teaching school at the time. And I tried to keep telling her, just take tomorrow off. It'll be fine. And, no, I can't do that to go to a football game. It's like she immediately regretted it and is regretting it years later.
Yeah.
But, Grandpa died a couple of years ago. So just awesome that we had, one of the final big time family get-togethers in that setting. It was so cool.
That is so cool.
Okay, so number 9, the women's Final Four in 2017 in Dallas. It was my third women's Final Four, but it was the shot and the game that had this one on the list. UConn had won 111 straight games, and Mississippi State ends that streak when Morgan Williams hits a jumper at the buzzer. And I'm working for the NCAA during that event as a floor marshal, so sitting on the floor when she hits that shot to end that streak that will never be matched.
Right. Isn't that amazing how they have this streak, but yet you remember the thing that ends it? It's sad for the other team, but that's how it works. We remember the shot that stops it all.
And the funny thing is, Mississippi State, that will be the moment people always remember. And I think most people, when they look back on that, just think it was the championship game, but it was the semifinal. And Mississippi State actually lost in the championship to South Carolina 2 nights later.
Okay, I was going to say that if you're UConn, that probably stings even more, because I want the person that knocks me out of a playoff to at least make a run and win. I don't know, feel validated a little bit, right?
Right.
When the team that beats you is good enough to win it all. But then if the team that beats you then just loses, it's kind of like, all for nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had to live with that. But, I've been very fortunate to cover 3 women's Final Fours in some form or fashion, a couple of men's Final Fours. And that was certainly one of the best basketball moments I've ever seen. I actually, looking down at the list, that might be the top basketball moment I have. Yeah, it is.
That's great. What's next?
Okay. So one that actually happened before I made that original list, and I go back and look on it, think, how did I not include this one? Was the 1995 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. I was a bat boy that season.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's the ultimate summer job as a baseball-loving kid.
Yeah.
You have to have connections. And as I mentioned, I have one. So I used it. And Grandpa got me the job. And I was in the visiting clubhouse, actually, those 2 seasons, because Joe Macco, who was the legendary clubhouse manager for the Rangers for a long, long time, they actually moved him from the home clubhouse to the visiting clubhouse in that off season prior to 1995. So I had the choice, and I wanted to work with Joe. I had known him for so long, and I thought, it'd be really cool to meet all of those visiting team players as they come in. As neat as it would have been to work with the Rangers and, get to know those guys, I thought kind of the variety would be cool. But more than anything, it was Joe. Just a great man and somebody that I was so excited to work with. That day, all of the pageantry with the All-Star Game, being on the field for it. And, but the coolest thing was before the game. So hours and hours before first pitch, and myself and the other guys who worked in the clubhouse, we got there well before we were supposed to, just because, you're going to sit at home and wait around. You want to be in that stadium on All-Star Day for as long as you can.
Coming in, when, and who you're going to catch and see. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why it was special. You're sitting around a clubhouse. We were just playing cards, and probably 2 hours before players were even supposed to arrive, Tony Gwynn walks into the clubhouse and sits down to play cards with us and says, I was just getting bored at my hotel. Thought I would come in and BS with the Bat Boys. And we're sitting there for 2 hours with just us and Tony Gwynn, playing cards, talking a little bit of baseball, but just hanging out with, other than Ted Williams, the greatest hitter to ever walk the face of the earth.
Wow. Those connections pay off. That's awesome. Yeah. How cool. I mean, not many people can say that they got to do something like that.
Yeah, no, I know this list kind of shows me and shows it, but I've just been so incredibly blessed by all of these things I've been able to see. I mean, a lot of them come from broadcasting and what I've done for a living, but the vast majority of them come from just fortune because of my family, because of where I've lived, whatever it may be. And, that's one of them. Just, I was so lucky to have that opportunity to work a job that kids would have, they don't want it as a summer job. They'd pay to do that job if they could. And I was able to bless some of my friends that summer too, because there was on occasion where another bat boy couldn't make it for whatever reason. And I'd call up friends like, the Angels are in town and our other bat boy called in sick. Do you want to come work the game with me? It's like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Really?
Sure. Drop everything. Oh, that's so cool. I always wonder when I'm at Rangers games or watching them, I always wonder, how you get to be the bat boy, because I've got a little guy that would love to do that as a baseball player. And I mean,
start making friends with owners or somebody high up in the
right.
front office.
And we don't live. I mean, we're here in Frisco, so we're not in the in the know in the
Right.
inner circle, the Arlington inner circle. But man, that just looks like the best opportunity to be a kid and
Oh,
get
it
to
was.
be down there, and the warm up, the outfield warm up guys. I mean, all of those kids. That's so cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. Okay, number 7, the most recent addition to the list.
Okay.
This year's Winter Classic.
Hockey made the list. Awesome. I wasn't there. Obviously, you're about to tell us that you were there. We watched it on TV, and even just watching it on TV was magical. I mean, it was just, and I'm not that normally that mesmerized by like the hockey, the annual Winter Classic game, but just knowing that it was here and just watching all the little details and knowing what all went into it from some people that I did know that were down there was amazing. So tell me about it.
Well, I just couldn't imagine watching it on TV. Like, I had to find my way into that place. And, this is the only event on here with my son so far. I mean, there's going to be more in the future where we go to stuff together and he makes the list again. But, I took a gamble because he at the time was just 3 years old, and I knew he could melt down anytime. It was going to be cold. It was going to be loud. It was going to be crowded.
Yeah.
But it was the only time the Winter Classic would probably ever be in Dallas. And I wanted to be there with him. Hockey is his favorite sport right now.
Okay.
I mean, we took him to an Allen Americans game when he was maybe a year and a half. And we were invited to a suite. So like, we don't want to pass up on that. This is the perfect time to bring him. And, if he melts down, we're not out anything. We'll just, have dinner and head off, and maybe we don't even see any of the game. That'd be fine. But he went down to the first row of that seat suiting, and the look on his face was, he couldn't really talk much of the time. And it was just kind of that look that, Mom, Dad, do you see how awesome this is? Just all of the lights going on the scoreboards and the action on the ice and everything so close.
Yeah.
And after that, we'd get out of the car at an Allen game, and he would take me by the hand and physically drag me into the stadium, just looking back, hockey game. He loved it. And I just couldn't pass up going to this game with him. It would have been so easy to go with my dad or with one of my friends. And I know we would have seen the entire game then, but had to try it. And he was having a great time, around the fairgrounds and just looking at everything. And then the national anthem plays, okay? Really loud fireworks so close to us. And he squeezes me and says in this sweetest little voice, "I'm ready to go home now."
Oh, no. I knew you were about to say that, and I thought, no, surely not. Did you go, or did you get to watch any of the game?
He calmed down and lasted through a period.
Okay. Well, that's something. Wow.
So, we walked around, after the first period ended, we walked around the fairgrounds a little bit. I know, kind of hoping he would get a second wind and want to go back in, but, it was obvious that it wasn't happening. So, we missed the Stars goals. We missed the second and third period, but, just the atmosphere at Fair Park and being in that stadium and seeing the ice on the field at the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
And he, even though he wanted to leave early, he talked about it for weeks and will still occasionally bring it up, just how how great it was to be at the Winter Classic. And,
That's awesome.
I don't know that he'll necessarily remember it. It'll probably just be all through pictures and me telling him about it. But, it's something that I'll always treasure. It was just awesome.
That is awesome. Well, there's many more Stars games in his future. I'm sure that he will have he can probably rank his own Allen American Stars games later on in life.
Never a Winter Classic again, probably. But it will take maybe if we can go to a Stanley Cup final somewhere down the line, that'll rank high on his list.
Yeah.
So number 6 is, you take it kind of full circle with, me sharing that with my son. And number 6 is something that my dad wanted to share with me. It was the Super Bowl between the Bills and the Cowboys in Pasadena in January of 1993.
93. Okay.
So the first one of that run. And my dad's attitude at the time was a little bit like me with the Winter Classic. We don't know if this will ever come around again.
Yeah.
We need to do this. He hadn't seen the Cowboys win a Super Bowl since the 70s. Grew up in Arlington, had lived in DFW his entire life, and just decided, we need to be there. It might not happen again. And obviously we find out that it does happen.
Yeah. I was going to say, when he says this is it, you mean for the Cowboys to get to
Right.
the Super Bowl? And
Sure. Okay. Yeah. You never know. And at that point,
you weren't in town. You still had to travel. He just means for his team to be
right.
there.
Exactly. And, he got the tickets for, I don't know how much he got the tickets for, but it had to be a ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
And, found a hotel room, booked the round trip to LAX. And, we did it up big and, got there the day before, did the whole NFL experience theme park outside the stadium. And Michael Jackson did the halftime show that year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Cowboys, won in a huge blowout. And, we take the red eye back to DFW after the game. I can't sleep. I'm, just on top of the world after having gone to the Super Bowl. And I'm in 8th grade at the time. And as I mentioned, I was writing for Class X in the Star-Telegram. So I was writing my weekly column on the plane back from LAX to DFW. And then, we get into Dallas as the sun is coming up. And my dad still insisted, you're going to school today. I didn't get to take the day off. So
you really knew how to be a professional sports writer and broadcaster in 8th grade, having to take the red eye, go to a big game, and then just keep on rolling the next day. That's incredible that you have that experience that young.
Oh man. I mean, between all the Ranger stuff, like I said, we went to spring training growing up and every spring break. And, we did so many cool things as kids. And this was part of it. I mean, my dad was, again, like I said, a huge Cowboys fan and wanted to make sure that he and I experienced that together. And, of course, I walk into school, I'm the only kid in my school who went to the Super Bowl the day before. And I'm the most popular kid in school for one day, the only day of my life where I'm the most popular kid in school.
Wow.
And my mom has a great picture of me from that afternoon when I got back from school, just crashed out on the couch after not having slept since, Sunday morning.
Yeah. All the adrenaline, you finally crashed. Yeah.
Wearing my Cowboys Super Bowl champion shirts, crashed out on the couch at home after school that day.
That wraps up Chris Mycoskie's list from honorable mentions to number 6. Stay tuned for next week's episode where we hit the top 5 in-person sporting events from Chris Mycoskie. Thank you for listening to this episode of Hustle and Pro. We will see you next week.